Welcome to the Bias Buzz, powered by Accuracy in Media. I'm Don Irvine, and he's Brian McNichol. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning.
All right, so we're doing it on Tuesday and not Wednesday. We're a little day early, so we don't have primary results. Not that a whole lot matters at this stage. The Republican primaries, anything going on there, Trump's got this thing pretty much locked up. But the Democrats, even though I think Hillary's got this thing in the bag, it's interesting because West Virginia is going to vote today. This is coal miner country. We talked a little bit about her issues with the coal miners. She won this previously in 2008. I don't think she's going to win this one.
Right. I think she could end up losing the last 14 and 23 of the last 30. And the thing about West Virginia, the thing we talked about last week, the thing about we're putting the coal miners out of business, she was never able to clean that up. You know, we talked about like what she would, the context that was actually said in, you know, it was fairly defensible, but her defense just didn't track. You know, they're madder at her now than they were before.
Right. Yeah. It was a sloppy cleanup, attempt at that. It probably only made things worse because she comes out. It's a misstatement, and people wonder exactly, what is she saying at this point. One of the interesting things I went back and I was looking at this, the previous cycles, was that West Virginia also is the state where we had that felon on the ballot in 2012, and he got 41% of the vote. He's on the ballot again. I mean, he could be the wild card and even slow down Bernie to a certain extent, but I can't imagine this guy's going to get 41%. I think that was a lot of anti-Obama feeling in 2012. West Virginia moving away from the Democrats, more towards the Republicans. So that's good news for the Republicans overall, but they still face a tough road to hoe, I think, in November.
And I also want to make the point that, why didn't people believe Hillary on this? Why was her story not bought? And it's prior bad acts, right? There's a pattern of dishonesty. There's a pattern of, trying to have things both ways, being on both sides of every issue. And, this time she may have really been right, but doesn't get taken that way because she's not been honest going forward. Her entire career has been like this.
Right, and she lacks the political skills of her husband, and that
by a long shot.
Yeah, and because of that, someone like Bill, even with the track record of the Clintons, he probably could have cleaned that up and made that a lot better, but Hillary just can't do that. She just doesn't have that skill set.
That's right, and he would not have put it that way anyway. He wouldn't have that quote hanging over him, and he would know how to deal with it if he did.
Right.
He's a generational talent as a politician. You got to hand it to him. She is not. She is the wife of a generational talent.
That's where we go to that. Well, let's talk about Donald Trump a little bit. He's going to be in the news. We're going to continue to talk about Trump, whether or not we have primaries to discuss or all the way up through the convention and probably post-convention as well. In the news, now he's going out there and he's going after Hillary to a certain extent, but we have this interesting mix now where we've got Paul Ryan in the mix, we've got Sarah Palin in the mix in discussion. The speaker, Paul Ryan, said that he wasn't going to support Trump.
Not ready to support
Trump at this point. They're going to have a sit-down discussion, I guess, to kind of see where they're going on it. Trump said he was surprised at that reaction. He thought he had Ryan in his back pocket already, but don't assume anything in politics, I guess.
That's right. And as far as Ryan is concerned, he's acting like this is something he can bargain with Trump over. This is not a bargain thing. If you will just come my way on these three public policy issues, I'll come over to your side. This is, you're either in or out. Trump is not going to bargain with him. He doesn't. He knows that no one cares. That's the other thing is like how endorsements are playing in this election. No one cares who Paul Ryan wants. It's not worth 10 cents for Trump to try to buy his endorsement.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because Ryan came out and said that he would resign as the convention chairman if that's what Trump wanted. I don't remember anybody ever saying that before. Is he trying to throw him a bone or just say a little peace offering?
Well, I mean, he's acknowledging where the power lies. He is the chairman by virtue of being the Speaker of the House, but he's at the whim of the candidate, of the nominee, and the nominee could remove him. I don't think he will. I could see him just not worrying about who the chairman of the committee of the convention is. But they're both like marking their space.
Yeah, and I want to interject something here too. I just came back from the North Carolina State Convention, and that was an interesting affair to kind of observe a little bit. They spent a lot of time. They were electing their delegates to the National Convention. Now, even though we realize that Trump is going to have this nomination at this point, a majority of the people who got elected were Cruz delegates, which I find to be interesting. I assume that means they're going to have to go, they'll still going committed to voting for Cruz on the first ballot, maybe to make a statement there. The Trump people got a pretty good reception overall. I saw in the exhibit hall they were getting sign-ups and things like that. But not everybody was ready to join, and jump on the Trump train, as they say, at this point.
Yeah, I was looking at polling the other day on some of the remaining states, and Trump is way ahead. But Cruz has a substantial minority of people, even though he's dropped out. He was, he was in the 30s in one of the states, and I think in New Jersey, though, Trump had more than 70%. But he's getting votes. He's still getting support, and his fundraising effort is still going. It's like he really most people, when they tell you they suspend their campaign, it means they end their campaign. In his case, it may really be suspended.
Right, and here's the thing, is that I am leaving tomorrow for Texas for their state convention that takes place this weekend. Cruz was expected to have a very big presence there. The campaign went on suspension. I'll be curious, because he's always had this kind of outsized influence in the exhibit hall with the things that they've done. Will he do something like that, just have a little bit different take on it? I'll be kind of curious to see how he's going to play this, because it could have a big impact. I mean, if they don't do what they were planning on doing, it would also leave a big hole in their exhibit space, and as well as their program. But it seems that the Cruz people one of the things that they're trying to do is go after the convention rules and the platform and things like that, and set that, knowing that they're not going to win the nomination, but they can, affect and influence other things.
Right. There's some stuff on Trump has talked about changing the abortion plank, changing the tax plank. I mean, things that go to the very heart of what it means to be a Republican. And there's a move in the party now. It's like, at least let's not be on the record. Whatever he's on the record for, that's his business. But let's not have us all collectively on the record for it.
Right. And there was a story, I think, in the Post this morning that said that Trump is basically on the left, campaigning really to the left of Hillary Clinton, and it's like, well, now what do you do? That's just kind of mind-boggling that we've gone in that direction already. Not surprising with Trump, because he's been such a wild card this whole time around. But if he stays on that on that track, it'll be really hard. I mean, we still have that Never Trump movement, Stop Trump movement. They see that. I mean, this is only going to pick up more steam.
Well, the other thing is their strategy has been let Trump be Trump. They do not try to rein him in. They think, the bombast is helpful. There's some evidence they're right. But when you're getting into, he is, in the last week said higher taxes are a possibility, raising the minimum wage is a possibility, although the way he talked about that was pretty vague. I don't know that he understands where the levers of power lie in that, whether you do it at the state level or the federal level, and how much and what the economics. But he's playing with these ideas. And, when's the last time you heard a Republican talk about trade the way he does? We're usually for it.
Right. And he actually hasn't been right on the trade issue in terms of the things that he's understood, or at least the figures brought out, is that, trade, the way NAFTA has been, is that there's been a net positive overall.
A huge net positive.
Yeah, for the country. But he talks about it as like one of the worst things we've ever done. But that's a very far left position. That's not even really Hillary's position on
right.
this.
That's past Hillary.
Yeah. So this is just kind of a bizarre thing that we have going on here. So now we've got a couple other things. I mentioned Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin came out and said that she wasn't going to be a candidate for vice president, and I was thinking, thank goodness for that. Yeah. Miracles still can occur. But on the other hand, she went right after Speaker Ryan, and and she kind of wants to cantor him, I guess, in Wisconsin. I don't see that this is actually going to come to play or pass, but what is the deal with Sarah Palin?
Well, I would not, if I were Paul Ryan, I would take it seriously, because the mood in the country is to throw out the establishment, and he is definitely identified with the establishment by policy and practice. And if he is going to if they have an opponent who really embodies this new thing properly, is can say he's a proxy for Trump, Ryan's in trouble. I mean, it's a doable deal.
Well, and we've seen other speakers, get dumped
Yeah.
as well. So it's not like there isn't historical precedent for that, but it's kind of an interesting way because Ryan was definitely a hero of conservatives just a few years ago, and he seems to be the anti guy now for a lot of people. A lot of people have lost faith in him.
He's identified with the establishment.
Yeah, and I don't know how establishment he really was deep in his heart beforehand. I do think that a lot of things that happen when you get these positions of power. You're now trying to manage, not just your group of Republicans, but you're also trying to keep the Democrats from throwing too many bombs at you, in essence. So, there are 434 other people that you're overseeing and trying to get legislation and other things moved. I think that's extremely difficult for anybody, and it's hard sometimes for them to hold to their deeply held principles and their compromises. I'm not sure the voters always understand all of that, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, obviously the House is, that's one of the things people talk about, wild electoral scenarios. Okay, if Cruz could get it to where, he could win one state, right? Like we were talking about the one state theory. Okay, then it goes to the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives is Cruz country. They followed him through the shutdown. And all the reason we don't have Boehner as Speaker anymore is Cruz, right? Cruz convinced them that was not the way to go. So the people in the House, the people who got elected to the House in the last, 6 years, 4 cycles or so, they're Cruz-esque Republicans. So if they get a chance to help this, it could go in a wildly different direction.
Well, what I want to know is that why do people still pay attention to Sarah Palin?
I don't get that. I've never really understood it. I've always thought she was out of her league, and I don't find myself. We were talking about at the end of Climate Hustle. There's this panel discussion. Brett Bozell runs it about how this is treated in the media, and she was there as a former governor, public official, right? How this had happened to her, and she could barely answer the questions. I mean, these are softball. What do you think about this type of questions? And she would just.
I can see climate change from my house.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, she's not been, at one point she was really well handled, right? The people around her were really effective people. And that's not really the case anymore. Now she's kind of on her own, and she's sort of adrift. She's not really good and tight. Not well. She doesn't present well.
Yeah, but I think that's maybe why the media likes her so much at this point. It's just
the gaffe machine.
Yeah, she is. She's good for them. They need that to kind of counterbalance things. Lots of talk about third-party candidates, things like that. I have been on social media. I've seen a lot of the name Gary Johnson has popped up with a lot of people. Thoughts about Gary?
Well, he has an opponent. There's another libertarian. He has not clinched the libertarian, nomination yet. It would be interesting. There are a clique of people. He'd get some votes, right? And they'd come from both sides. I don't think you can assume that he hurts Trump any more than he hurts Hillary. I mean, the coalitions, as we've always understood them, are all out of balance. You're going to have people who, if Bernie doesn't win, go to Trump, right? They're not just going to settle for Hillary. Because what they're looking for is extreme versus measured. And, the other extreme candidate is not Hillary. She's the status quo candidate, right?
Right. At least on the popular vote side, I think it's handicapping this election is going to be very tough.
Yeah.
It's different. I mean, I don't think we've really seen this in our adult lifetime kind of, experience. So I'll touch on this, coming to talking about the elections, is that so there was an article in the Post this week about the electoral map favoring the Democrats, basically saying that Trump is really not the problem for the Republicans. It's the electoral map. Obviously, the electoral map is more key. Even if Trump gets the popular vote, if it doesn't fall right in the electoral college, it really won't matter. And what I thought was interesting about the article was that I guess was it Chris Cillizza that wrote this, that said, he looked at the traditional Democratic states, voting states, and the Republican voting states over since 1992, and there were 18 states plus the District of Columbia that have voted Democrat all that time, and that was 242 electoral votes, I think he said. and then he looked at, I think he found 13 that consistently have voted Republican, and that was like 102 or 103. But at 242, I mean, if he is right, 28 votes, 28 electoral votes. I mean, that's hardly anything. You know, I mean, she just has to win a couple more states, 2, 3 more states, and it's all over. Now, I want to say this, is that when I was in North Carolina, Steve Moore was the dinner speaker on Saturday night, and I guess he wanted to inject some enthusiasm or give some hope to the audience, you know, because polls have been showing that Trump basically generally has been trailing Hillary in most places. But he said that he expected Trump to win 35 states and it would be kind of a landslide. I find that to be highly optimistic, but then again, all bets are off the table at times.
Hey, you know, when we get to November, who will New Yorkers identify more as the favorite son of New York, Trump or Hillary? You know, Trump, right?
Yeah.
New York's in play. California is in play. Texas is in play the other way. Hillary has a shot at Texas. Trump probably will win Florida. He has a big presence there. What he's, you know, selling is bought in Florida, you know. You don't know. You don't know where all this is going. And, you know, to sit there, these people are sitting there with these maps, and it's like, there's no way Trump can win. And then the next thing you click on, there's no way Hillary can win. You know, no one knows. I mean, this will be fought on terrain that we can't even imagine yet.
Right.
You think about, you know, the election day is about 6 months, just about exactly from today, right? So think about 6 months ago. 6 months ago, it was early December. You know, did you think Trump was the presumptive nominee in early December? Did you think Bernie would still have a chance at this point in early December? You know, you can't predict this. This is off the rack.
Yeah, it is, as we said, it's kind of a crazy year. You know, maybe we'll get some clarity once Hillary and Trump officially have the nominations locked up, and then we go to, I don't know how many debates they'll have scheduled, but that will certainly be interesting.
If I were Trump, I would keep that to a minimum.
Yeah, I think
that's not good ground for him.
Right, I don't think it's good ground for him because, I mean, it's been okay for him up to this point because he can dominate and he can throw his barbs at all his competitors in the Republican Party. You know, during the debate, he can't just go over there and say, and Crooked Hillary did this and Crooked Hillary did that. That's, you know, he can't do that. And unless he gets an enormous education and ratchets up his ability to understand the issues better, you know,
right.
Those are things that Hillary will have a good command of.
Right. She's a wonk, and her husband's a wonk, and she's deeply steeped in policy. You know, she'll tell you, and she knows both sides of arguments because, you know, she spent her lifetime presenting both sides of arguments as her argument, right? So you're not going to get on either side of her of stuff. She's going to understand many more policy questions than you do, particularly foreign policy, right? She was the Secretary of State. She's read all the files. You know, he has little to no knowledge of that. You know, the debates could be ugly, and he cannot treat her like you say. You know, this is not going to be a little Marco thing. This is going to be serious. What do you know about this? This is a job interview. And while people like us take it seriously to this point, you know, the number of people who will be taking it seriously in September and October when those debates occur will be overwhelming. It'll be as much involvement in the political process as there has ever been in our lifetime.
Right, and Hillary still has some problems. And this past week we had the story about Guccifer, the hacker, that he got into the system, he said, and things like that. You know, we still have a lot of murky things with the email. There are more things that seem to be coming out every week about it. She hasn't seemed to be overly harmed by this yet, but I don't think the voters have focused on it. They're kind of caught up with the Clinton-Sanders fight and personality at this stage. I don't know. Do you think something like the Guccifer thing, other revelations will hurt her during this next stretch?
Well, the Guccifer, you know, everybody says, well, he didn't release what he allegedly had, right? So is this even true? Well, he is, you know, we know about this. We know about the whole email scandal because of him. That's how we got started down this road. The FBI is starting to interview her, Huma Abedin, her closest staffers, with an eye toward interviewing her in the very near future. When they do that, they're at the end of the investigation. They're getting ready to say whether they're going to prosecute or not. And when they ask you a question, they already know the answer. They're matching your answers up with known truths. So they better be careful. They better get their story straight. and it's about to happen. We'll know in a month or so. We'll know. It'll
Right.
be one way or the other.
And Guccifer is he's going to go to prison probably, right?
Right.
I mean, that's I think that's pretty much a guarantee.
Right. And the thing about this is, though, the thing to not forget about, it's like they get hung up on, well, was this classified at the time and how was it marked? And, she came into office and the first thing she said was, put a secret server in my house to get around the State Department, to get around FOIA, to get around Electronic Records Act. That's what she did. She evaded. The first thing she did, step one, get where we can talk and no one can hear.
Yeah, I mean, who does that unless you have something to hide? So
Right.
there was definitely some monkey business going on there. Another breaking story at the end of last week is spilling over into this week is Ben Rhodes. He works for the White House. There was a profile in New York Times Magazine on the weekend, and he talked about, in essence, really how he created an echo chamber and they changed the narrative. He focused with the news media and Beltway insiders, certain experts, to make the narrative on the Iran nuclear deal such that they could sell to the public and made the White House look like what they were doing. They had all these things lined up. The response has been interesting. I mean, the media doesn't. He called them. They don't really know anything, and a bunch of 27-year-olds, and
Right.
he wasn't overly kind to the news media, which then obviously they are not taking that well. But the White House is really having a hard time defending this.
Right. And I thought the interesting thing is the idea that, when we want this to be the narrative, we have 62 toadies set up. We send the toadies an email, and here it comes, right? They start tweeting at each other, and before you know it, here's this storm that we can create out of people who are supposed to be representing readers. They're supposed to, you're a reporter. First thing you learn is you're there for the readers. You're not there for the team you're covering, the president you're covering. You're there for your readers. And these guys are knowing, no, we're there for our sources. We're waiting for our sources to tell us what they want the news to be.
Right. And I mean, the thing here is just, too, is that, as you're saying, I mean, these guys, these reporters in particular, I mean, they should be investigating what's going on. They should be looking into these things and questioning these things. Instead, what we have is things like, they're basically repeating and doing things, whatever the administration says.
That's right. They're just parroting the company line, uncritically. And now we're in a hugely bad deal. And the Iranians make a fool of us out of it seemingly every week, dropping things that need to be dropped and so forth. So where do we go on that? How do we get out of this deal that was made and the support for it? And I'm not sure there was ever a lot of support for it.
Right.
And they've never put it to a vote, which kind of tells you something too. But this guy, the other thing that struck me about this is here's this guy, I'm a mind meld with the president, and I've learned to zip all these ideas around and play on the biggest board in the world. And, sir, you have presided over the most disastrous 7 years in the history of U.S. foreign policy. What are you bragging about? You should be hiding under your desk.
Right. All right. Well, let's wrap this up with just probably one or two more things real quick. Facebook. We're broadcasting on Facebook Live, but Facebook, there was a story that came out last week in Gizmodo. It took a little bit of time to get a little traction. It seemed like yesterday it just kind of exploded, but we knew about this last week, that they were censoring conservative websites, basically preventing them from showing up in the trending topics and things like that. They have since denied us that there are rigorous rules in place to prevent this. But to me, one of the things it does is it confirms this liberal bias in technology. We've had conservatism suspicious of Google. And Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, is a big Democratic supporter. I'm not overly surprised at this.
It operates on the same principles as mainstream media. You think you are smarter and I know better what to do with your money than you do. So give it to me and I will spend it properly. It's the same mindset that leads to that. And the other thing about it is I must confess, I have never clicked on what was trending. Either it was trending to me personally some other way or, so I don't know how much impact that has anyway.
Right. I mean, I look at the trending topics when I'm using Facebook. I don't necessarily click on that, but I noticed that one of the somebody had captured some kind of screenshot, and all of a sudden in their trending Facebook topic Facebook feed came red state, And it's just like, oh look, red state's showing up in my feed. I don't remember ever seeing that showing up on a trending topic before. As if somebody that as they're curating it, they're like, we better kind of fix this to make it look like we're really not as guilty as everybody says we are or something.
Hey, memo to staff: everyone play it straight for a week.
Yeah,
and then they stop noticing.
Yeah, until everybody calms down and whatnot. But the Facebook algorithm is a very complicated kind of a thing in the way they do a lot of things. So it's really difficult to kind of figure this out. But once again, like I said, the bottom line is I'm not surprised. It fits the liberal scheme, the whole thing that you're talking about too. That this is the way the liberal media operates. So this shouldn't be a big surprise to anybody.
Right.
Washington Nationals, our little sports wrap up. Rough series with the Cubs. That was, I wasn't able to see much of that, but I saw the scores and I saw the stat line, and it wasn't pretty.
Well, some tight, taut games, a good team on their field, balls bouncing a couple of different ways. It's not that bad a weekend. Last night they won on a walk-off home run by Clint Robinson. Bryce Harper may get in a little trouble for that because the pitch before he got thrown out of the game. They called a strike on the previous hitter, struck him out. It was Danny Espinosa, and the plate umpire turned around and threw out Harper, who was standing in the dugout. And you see on TV, Harper says, I didn't say anything, So and then then the next pitch, the guy hits the ball out of the park. Now, when you're thrown out of a game, you're supposed to go up the tunnel into the clubhouse. We don't see you anymore tonight. But then the game ends, and there's a big celebration on the field, and he went out and got into the shared some thoughts with the umpire. So. Yeah. And usually you're not supposed to do that. And if the league office saw that on film, there will at least be a fine and maybe a 1 or 2 game vacation.
Yeah, well, I will say, as you said, playing the Cubs, that's really the best team in baseball at this point. They've outscored their opponents by 102 runs already this year.
Gives about 35 games. So
yeah,
and
it gives the Cubs fans hope that maybe finally they'll actually make it to the World Series. Yeah. They've been waiting a long time, so
it's going to take more than Steve Bartman to keep them out this
That's
year.
Right. It'll be good for them. Well, anyway, that's all we have today for the Bias Buzz. I want to thank everyone for helping out today. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page. Also, not just Accuracy Media's, but mine and Brian's as well. And then we will see you again next week with another edition of the Bias Buzz.